And now it is 1 o'clock, top of the hour. Want to welcome you here to today's Creator Stage Talk. It is Deepfake Image and Video Detection by an old friend of ours. And how long has it been now? I think it's been 10 years, over 10 years, if you can believe it. We're not getting any younger, folks. So we're not getting any younger, but sometimes a relationship lasts a lifetime, like this one. My honor, always my honor to introduce you to Mike Raggo.
Awesome. Can everybody hear me okay with the mic? Cool. My name is Mike Raggo. Super honored to be here and humbled. For any of you where it's your first DEF CON, this is my 25th DEF CON, and I still get nervous. But really huge shout outs and thank you to the Packet Hacking Village and the Wall of Sheep for having me again present on their stage. Today's talk, as you know, will be Deepfake Image, Video, and Detection, and is a compilation of a lot of research we've done over the last 25 years, Chet Hosmer and myself, ranging from everything from steganography to all types of image analysis and detection. So I won't really talk too much about myself, but to kick things off and loosen things up, I'll tell you a quick story about how I got into cybersecurity in 1993. I was working at NASDAQ. I was a Unix sysadmin and liked to download and play around with tools. This was like, roughly 30 years ago. And I downloaded a tool called Satan by one of the guys that was part of DEF CON 1, a gentleman by the name of Dan Farmer. And Satan stood for something like security assessment tool set, something or other, that basically allowed you to do vulnerability scanning at the time. So I thought it'd be a cool tool to download, predated things like Nessus, stuff like that. Downloaded it, ran it on the trading floor in the middle of the day, and took down the stock market. So wasn't one of my better days, and I wouldn't advise doing that. But fortunately, we were doing virtualization long before people had even coined the term, and so it failed over to our backup location. Credit to them, didn't lose a single trade in the process, which was pretty amazing. But I did get a golden pass to the VP of Information Security's office and basically said, Mike, I'm here to offer you one of two options. You're either fired or you can take a promotion. And I said, well, I'll take the promotion. What's the promotion? And he said, you're going to form our first security team here at NASDAQ. So it was definitely an honor and learned a lot through it. So anyways, all right, so we'll jump into the topic here. So we're going to cover a variety of different techniques. I'm going to try to not get too technical because you can always do your own research afterwards. But what I really want to cover are a plethora of different ideas you can use for your own image and video analysis when you feel that you've got some kind of fake image. It may be AI generated, it may be Photoshopped, it may be something else. And there's a lot of different ways these can be created, and they continue to grow like a carbon life form. So this will be a mashup of a variety of those techniques. We've been authoring a Python toolset for some time, and I decided to take that and morph that into a free GPT for ChatGPT. So you can check that out. It incorporates virtually everything we're going to cover today. So you can play around with the tool. It is free and gives you that ability to do a lot of the different types of analysis and detections we're going to cover today. So in terms of the agenda, we'll cover different types of AI and GAN techniques. If you're not familiar with GAN, we'll talk about that for a moment. We'll talk about the different methods by which these are created. And then we'll get into the next rock layer to talk about error level analysis, noise detection and noise maps, edge anomalies, and a variety of things like that. And then in addition, kind of the old school methods before we really had, social media, believe it or not, was sharing images on the internet, but not really uploading them to social media that tends to strip all the metadata from it. We have found that there are still remnants that are left behind, and we'll talk about that in today's world. So beyond EXIF metadata analysis, there are additional things you can do, and we'll talk about that as well. And then we'll demo for you the GPT tool. I'll put a QR code up in case you want to follow along and dork around with it while we're going through the talk as well. And then we'll get into some additional advanced techniques as well, and then wrap up with some futuristic predictions and additional items. So it's obvious when we see an image on social media and other places. Some of them are quite obvious, right? I mean, would a guy at 35,000 feet, a pilot, be doing a selfie outside a plane? Obviously not. In fact, his hair isn't moving, right? He has perfect hair, right? But as you start to take a closer look at this, and you need to prove this for forensic purposes, there's a lot of analysis you can actually do to more definitively say that it is definitely fake. We work quite a bit with a lot of forensic investigators, and while although some of these look, from a topical standpoint that they are fake, sometimes they actually are not. But bottom line, when we get into the advanced tool set, we're going to talk about some of the methods you can use beyond what we've got in the GPT to just do some very advanced techniques and look at things what we call like within the pixels, such as the nearest closest neighbor, and do advanced analysis like that, leveraging ML and training on real and fake images. And we'll dive into that. In addition, as part of scientifically proven that, I'm sure many of us saw this picture out on the web a few months ago, right? And, through the GPT that we'll cover, which again is free, you can do this level of analysis to identify what characteristics in the image were maybe photoshopped in or AI generated, whether it be with DALL-E, Midjourney, and many of the other AI tools that are out there. In addition, it's always good to kind of know within the image where this was placed. Even if it's AI generated, the smoothing techniques and other things are imperfect, and there's a variety of ways in which you can detect that. Going back to our grassroots though, if there is no metadata to find in terms of EXIF data, which would be at the beginning portion of the image, which might tell you what camera was used to take the picture, the time and date, and what we used to see a lot, which would be the geolocation information, there are now advanced metadata analysis you can do leveraging things like the ICC profile. The ICC profile are still commonly used today with images. For example, if you have an Android device, it'll drop in, ICC profile information. And the ICC profile information is intended to give you the visibility into how the image is actually being rendered and generated. And it's used by the renderer to determine how it's going to show that picture to you. And you can use those old school techniques like a hex editor to find this information. So choose your favorite hex editor, go in there, and you can find a variety of fingerprints within the image. So in this example, we do look at the ICC profile. That's the International Color Consortium, and a standard by which dictates how the image is actually going to be rendered when you actually take a look at it. These artifacts do get left behind in the image even after you upload it to social media many times. So these are things that you can look for. So let's dig into the next rock layer here. You may have also heard with many of the AI tools today for creating images, whether it be DALL-E, Copilot, Midjourney, and many of the others, that they're starting to embrace this watermark capability. It may be visible to you, or it may be very tiny, but still visible under a lens, if you zoom in and take a look at it. For example, a lot of the new DALL-E methods do embed a watermark, a visible watermark, versus one that you might find using hex editor like we showed on the previous screen. So it's visibly there. So usually at the bottom right-hand corner of the image, you can zoom in the image and actually see the color code and know that it was created by DALL-E. What's kind of interesting about that is, yes, you could save that then as a PNG or a JPEG or something else that might spawn additional compression. Some of it may survive, some of it may not. Or if you crop it, you could remove that watermark. So it's not foolproof, but it's a first step at really standardizing a lot of this. But if you're a fan of Discord and Midjourney, you may find that there's not much that they're doing today around this. So if you go into Discord and you're generating these AI generated images, there may be little to no any form of a watermark or anything left behind. So when we talk about GAN, we're talking about generative adversarial networks. And this is a method by which you can essentially leverage this technique, and it's usually leveraged, as you might expect, by adversaries to circumvent detection. So, in the Dan Farmer theme, there's no better way to, enhance your tool set and get better at this detection, in this case, than by understanding the adversary and diving in and understanding how they create this. Like you see in many ML type processes or approaches, you can have a set of data or a corpus, if you will, of what's known to be real images. And then also a set of either pre-created fake images or create them within the GAN and then leverage the discriminator. So with the discriminator, starts to distinguish one from the other. There is what's called a loss calculation, which there is loss, right, when we're creating these and then recompressing them and saving them and things like that. And the whole idea from the adversarial perspective is to live through all of that so that people can't detect it, is essentially in a non-technical sense here. And so we'll talk more about that when we get into it. So as a backdrop here then, we're going to go through some demo related stuff and then peel this onion back and talk about the different detections. So within ChatGPT, if you use it today, either the free or paid version is the fake image forensic examiner that we created, a free GPT that you can use to do a lot of different types of analysis. It is prompt oriented, so you can have a conversation with it. It's not just upload an image and tell me if it's fake or real, but furthermore, what techniques were used to create the AI image, what kind of tool was used, what kind of things were hidden in the image, what kind of objects can I look for? Can I do a reverse image search for this image afterwards and use it for OSINT? There's a plethora of things you could do with this tool and leveraging the horsepower of OpenAI. So if you want to follow along, there's a QR code. You're welcome to click on the QR code if you trust it. It should take you to ChatGPT where you can then take a look at the tool. And if you want to upload a random image and start doing this analysis as we're going through the talk, you can certainly do that. I'll also be giving out cards afterwards so you can get a copy of the QR code if you wanted to. But this will kind of allow you to kind of follow along as we have fun here in the rest of the talk. So as I mentioned, prompts matter, right? Even a single word that might be slightly different with a prompt may yield a very different result. We do provide a number of pre-baked prompts for you to help you get started. And they do follow various sequences. So if you want to dig into various portions of the detection, it'll give you a predefined set of prompts, or you can type in whatever you want. That's the beauty of ChatGPT and many of these other generative AI tools. In addition, at the end, if you're really using this for forensics, it will allow you to create a PDF report. So you can ask it once you've done all your analysis, hey, please include this, please include that, or all the research that you've done, please include this in a forensic report that I can export and have in a PDF form and share with other people. Or you can continue prompting. I've done a variety of continued prompts beyond what we provide or frame out for you. And I've been really surprised with the reverse image search and OSINT stuff that I can do as a result. If you attended some of our previous talks in the previous years, a couple of years ago, we did a talk in the Packet Hacking Village around leveraging images that we took from social media to do intelligence around the Ukrainian and Russian war. And beyond the object recognition and optical character recognition that we demoed in that, you could now use that within here, and you can also use it for your reverse image search. So you don't have to jump out of the actual prompting, but actually do everything right in the tool, rather than have 8 different browser windows up trying to find images and find out where they're located and things like that. All right, so let this play out while I talk a little bit more about it. So when you actually go into ChatGPT, you can search for GPTs that are out there, and you can look for this fake image analysis tool, fake image forensic examiner, to allow you to do the analysis. And I'll pause on this and kind of click through it a little bit so you can see a little bit more about what it's going to do. And we are going to break it down on the next few slides for you as well. So once you select that, you can look up the tool, or if you clicked on the QR code, it should take you right to it. And then it's going to allow you to upload an image and then ask, hey, has this been manipulated or fake? It says, yes, I'm going to run all kinds of forensic analysis on this for you. First, I'm going to take a look at the image and see if I find any metadata, whether that's EXIF data, ICC profile data, and other things we've actually put in there, artifacts we've seen that have either been prepended to the image within the file or appended to it and hidden in other areas too, based on our steganographic experience. In addition, it'll then kind of dive into what we're going to cover in the next few slides related to error level analysis, noise analysis, and understanding what those do and what they mean. And then additionally, a marked up image with all the artifacts that are found for you. So first we'll talk about a noise map. Many times related to a variety of different image formats, for example, a JPEG, is the ability to detect manipulation and really uncover what's considered to be inconsistent noise patterns. With a lot of the algorithms that are available out there, in this case with DALL-E that we're leveraging, is the ability to say, hey, do like a noise map, tune out all the stuff that has sort of less noise, or if you want to look at, this image here, what is more pronounced, right? I can see thicker lines throughout the image, and I can see more, shadowed type lines in images. And based on that composition is to really tune out what we consider the noise or less pixelated areas through this lens and really subtract that and then see what remains. If there are very strong, pixels left that frame out visually things that you look at, right? And I'm describing this in very non-technical terms rather than getting into the algorithm, is starting to kind of frame out some interesting characteristics. This particular image has a lot of very strong lines to it once we've tuned out the noise. So as a result of doing this noise map, there's some really interesting information here and starts to kind of point to some level of either photoshopping or AI generation at this point, but we still don't know yet, right? It's just one of a number of data points we're going to look at. We've run a variety of images through this, and this was one that was recent out on Facebook, that there was a big fire at one of the Temu facilities. And in this case, we run the error level analysis on it. And what that does is it also creates sort of like a different lens in which you can look at this. And it kind of really points out non-related type smoothing techniques and other things that it didn't really do a good job of being created when they created it, thus leaving behind a lot of like pixelated, fingerprints and things like that. So based on the artifacts, leveraging the DALL-E and error level analysis algorithm, we actually found that the logo, some of the fire components, and other things show that it's been superimposed. Where is it superimposed? A lot up around this characteristic here, right? Versus it being predominantly black or just a couple random dots here or there, you see herds of dots, right? And that's what the algorithm is doing, is to kind of bring that out and give you another data point to say, I see another sign of manipulation here. So some of this is related to kind of errors with the compression. Because someone maybe photoshopped this and dropped in that stuff, maybe they later ran it through AI, maybe they did a variety of things to touch it up. There are a variety of weird like compression techniques. The originating logo, the originating things that they put in there carried forward to the image and left behind kind of a photoshopped fingerprint, if you will. And again, gives you insights into fakeness, if you will. The third thing is, when we really start to get into edge analysis, I think this is one thing I find a lot of people can relate to, if I overlay things in the image, maybe that originating component, like a logo, like, whatever the object may be, maybe you didn't perfectly cut it out from the original image when you did the photoshopping, right? And that leaves really definitive, really hard to find little edges that also carry forward in the resulting image when you Photoshop it. Some of those, again, may also appear, as it says here, like very, very sharp or very, very thick compared to how the rest of the image should be actually smoothed out in a way. For example, earlier, although you saw it briefly, was an AI-generated image of a woman on a horse. And what's kind of interesting is, depending on how that was originally created, we're not entirely sure. But if you visually look at the image, there's one visually standout item, and that is 6 toes, right? So these are things we can visually see, but there are other characteristics, like there was editing or things done by AI in the smoothing technique that actually had some imperfectness to it, where we can see the bridle, the hands, things like that are not really properly smoothed. You'll find a lot of times with Midjourney, DALL-E, and these things, when you look at the image initially, the smoothing techniques, it may look very realistic, but when you look at certain portions of the image, you'll see that the smoothing is, for lack of better terms, weird, very detailed in certain portions, but in other portions kind of smudged, if you will. And that's exactly what's going on with this image here. So throughout the course here is a lot of like weird smoothing techniques that AI did to try to create a real horse, but in its efforts to do that, really left behind the ability to see that there was some leftover noise and the edges aren't quite perfect. DALL-E is quite good at also determining that, hey, this image was actually created in Midjourney, not DALL-E, and furthermore, these are non-horse characteristics, actually. So if you were to kind of draw a picture of a horse, I know I'm terrible at art. I'd be lucky if it even looked like a horse, right? But the point here is that by actually doing this gives you insights into, how well or how badly the AI is doing its job. So as we mentioned earlier, you can see here that not only are there 6 toes, but we're starting to get into a lot of characteristics of the image that are inconsistent with the rest of the image. So we see pretty clear architectural lines here to the horse's face. We see characteristics of the lady, but some of these from an edge perspective look kind of anomalous. The foot, not only 6 toes, but the lines around that seem kind of anomalous. And some of the smoothing technique in the tool will tell you that these aren't characteristics of a horse. So it is able to actually look at that, compare it to its massive database of what horses are supposed to look like, and then actually give you those insights. And so it does exactly that. We see over-smooth skin and deformed anatomy, particularly around the toes, feet, which seem unnatural. It almost looks like a plastic horse texture. And the Photoshop metadata, no camera or device information actually found. But so far, there's a lot of information here to imply that it's been AI generated and very synthetic. And as we stated, what we then do is allow you to output a report with the marked up areas. Still kind of refining this through a couple iterations here. For example, the red box should actually be overlaid on the foot. I'm still kind of adjusting the GPT, so I don't know why it's a little off, but at least it's telling you what it is. And furthermore, the other areas are more spot on with, the characteristics that were found to give you that evidentiary information to build a case to say that this was synthetically generated by AI. So we've been testing this for a while and had some other iterations of it. And of course, the number one ask was, hey, can you do this with video? And the short answer is yes. GPT-5, was just dropped, right, in the last week or so. And it does allow you now to upload a video. It can't directly do the video analysis, but it's going to do what we've always done from a forensics perspective, which is to break the video down into frames and then look at the individual frames themselves for signs of photoshopping and or AI generation or synthetic generation. So I made some edits literally this morning so that you could use this with images too. So you can use this free tool in ChatGPT with the GPT to upload an image, have it break it down into frames, and then have them analyze the individual frames, then bring together all those individual frames to come up with a final report on what that looks like. The report will actually give you an analysis of each individual frame and then a summary as well, all within the same report. So be careful what you ask for, right? If it's a long video and you ask it to break it down into 1 million frames, you're gonna have a really long report. I don't even know if ChatGPT will give you the PDF, right? So just kind of keep that in mind, right? You know, we're kind of breaking ground here, right, with some of this stuff. So as you can see here, the GPT will ask you like, hey, I'm used to doing this with individual images. Do you want me to extract the key frames from the start, middle, and end, and maybe some random intervals, and then look for anomalies? I can do a lot of the things I normally do. I can look for GAN texture patterns, things that are looking to circumvent the detection, because you can look for those characteristics too if they leave behind their fingerprints. And then furthermore, if there's any phase swapping, morphing, warping, inconsistencies, error level analysis, and a whole variety of other things. And this is what the report will look like. I haven't updated the GPT because I just put this together this morning, literally. But it'll give you a report in a text format, and probably in the next day or two, I'll add it in there so it'll be a PDF for you and more colorized and look pretty cool. But you can see here with the frame-by-frame analysis, this was actually a video I took at one of the hacker parties. We're on the 61st floor of the Cosmo the other night. So I just uploaded a random video that I actually took. So of course it didn't, find very many anomalies with that because it was a legitimate video that I uploaded. Okay? But you can see all the stuff it went through, how it broke it down into frames, how it went through and did all the analysis, and then came to a conclusion of no significant evidence of AI generation here. All right. So beyond the GPT, as I mentioned, this originated with a Python toolset that we've been working on for, about 8 years now. We presented it 6 years ago at Sky Talks, actually. And when we did, we talked about, and we've enhanced it since then, about how we're leveraging machine learning to effectively identify fake images. What this allows you to do then is adjust a few parameters, such as the level of sensitivity, and we'll talk more about how it does what it does, and how you can use this to dive deeper into the image, even beyond what the GPT does. So here you have The Rock and Zach from one of the popular movies here. And when you start to get into these very detailed images, it's interesting to see, hey, I could run this through the GPT, but maybe I want to do a deeper level analysis. What would that analysis include? I'll cover that for you in the next 2 slides. But the tool will take this image, you'll upload it to the actual Python tool via the UI or command line, and it's going to mark up a bunch of yellow dots that you see here on the screen. Now, what we determined after running this is that, like in a lot of movies and in Hollywood, these images and video are transcribed onto probably a green background, right? Or somehow edited in their labs and stuff when they do the finalization, right? So they weren't actually at the beach, is what we found, right? They had a fake background, superimposed them on it, and that's what we're detecting here. If we zoom in further, you'll see other characteristics of things they photoshopped in. So if we zoom in further, and it's a little cut off here, but The Rock's watch was dropped on there. He wasn't wearing that when they took the picture, actually. So they dropped that on, things like that. Now we're going to zoom in so you can see these herds of dots that give you more evidentiary proof about what's going on here. But how are we doing this? Well, we're taking various types of observations and their features and actually comparing real to fake. So with the ML, we're doing like you normally would, which would be have a set of real images and a set of fake images, and then later, and train on that, and then later start to incorporate these unknown images, right? And see, and if we can determine and validate the accuracy of it. There are some components within Python that we're using in order to do that. And what we're really doing is a nearest neighbor. So we're breaking it out into a grid across the entire image, depending on how detailed you want to get. That's what the sliders were on the previous screen, to really say, I'm going to break this up into 100 squares or 1 million squares, depending on how you want, what level of detail. Obviously, the more you drill in, longer it'll take for the tool to run, but it'll allow you to get that level of detail. And you do have the option with the tool to do your own training as well. So if you had your own corpus of data that included fakes and reals, you could train on that before you start actually testing your evidence if you really want to. We give it and provide it pre-trained, but you can do further training with it if you like. So let's get into some of the things that we actually tested with this. We're all familiar with lots of disinformation, right? And this is one of it was really the original genesis behind why we started doing this research and doing this tool set. And here you can see Putin, kind of doing a thumbs up to Trump and some other, political people here in the picture. And, a lot of people kind of wonder, like, what's with the thumbs up and what are they actually talking about? Is this legit, Well, with the image, we actually create we upload it and then determine like what level of sensitivity we want to dive into here. So I mentioned a moment ago, we actually break it up into a grid and then take a look at all the nearest neighbors. So we're looking at all the adjacent chunks or squares that we take out to kind of take a look at their individual characteristics, many of which we actually talked about that we're doing with the GPT itself, right? But now we're breaking it up into little bite-sized pieces and doing that and then comparing them to one another. Because maybe with that level of detail and pre-training of what we know about those characteristics, maybe we can get better accuracy. And we found that we do. So the result shows you herds of these dots around what has actually been photoshopped in. And as you probably saw me leading into, especially the thumbs up hand, that was photoshopped in. And that's what this revealed. And we validated that later with the creator of this too. But as you can see here, there are some other characteristics too. We're doing analysis, right? So what we're really looking for is to then take the herds of those dots, things that are uncharacteristic of the smoothing and all the other techniques that we talked about, to kind of see how this may have been edited. It's quite possible they did other smoothing techniques. It could be that they dropped in other people into the image. What the individual that we did this for really wanted to know is if that hand had been dropped in there and if Putin was really doing a thumbs up or not, and we determined he was not. We later did a reverse image analysis and found the original image without the thumbs up too. And just sort of a closer view so you can see. Based on the sensitivity, you'll get herds of these yellow dots to give you a visual way to really kind of analyze this evidence. You may have remembered this image as well. When there was a hurricane that was actually reaching the Northeast, this was actually released on the news, on a number of news outlets as a real image of the hurricane coming in, obviously, over New York City. But with our analysis here, we're able to debunk that image, and later on it was pulled from the newswire and determined to be actually a fake. This one is particularly interesting because we've got Trump and we've got Putin. And it looks like he's whispering something in his ear and Trump's kind of laughing, right? Everybody wanted to know, like, is this a real image, right? It's from a couple of years ago. So we ran this through the tool, and you can see from the characteristics here that these were photoshopped together into one image. So that was cool. We were able to kind of debunk those characteristics because even at the bottom, a lot of that would either be empty or you might have a couple anomaly dots, but not like pretty confident like herds here of dots that are framing out both faces, right? But here's where it gets really interesting. Oh, do you have a question? Go ahead.
What's very interesting about the analysis is the thing that would tell me that this is photoshopped. If you see where Trump's hair meets his forehead,
Yep.
that's just a very stark contrast. I find it cool that it can still tell it's fake, but it saw something totally different from what I was seeing.
Yeah, and let me take that a step further. So, great comment on that. So, why does Putin have dots on his eyes? This was something we didn't expect from the tool. They're on both of his eyes, and you'll see not really on Trump's eyes. I mean, there's one anomaly here, but maybe that's due to like a reflection, and other than seeing it's a characteristic of like, yeah, that's his eyeball, right? And maybe there was a flash little dot that it picked up on. But clearly, there are two herds of dots over Putin's eyes. We later found out that Putin wears colored contacts to make his eyes more blue. So it actually picked up on that. That was not a Photoshop artifact. That was part of like the original image, right? Before it was dropped in and as it sees now, right? So we're able to refine it just with the slider enough that it brought these out, right? So the other one that's really interesting is Trump has some herds of dots here around his front teeth, right? We researched that and we found out that Trump has caps on his front teeth, actually. So he had some dental work a long time ago, right? The tool was sensitive enough to pick up on that too. So we're not talking about fake photos and we're not talking about AI generation. We're talking about legitimate like human characteristics and finding those anomalies. We didn't realize the tool was that good. So we both had like a, oh wow moment,
So in regards to that, with the contact lenses and the caps, that's not really alteration of the image. Are you classifying it as a false positive?
Yep, great question. The answer is you have the flexibility in the tool to choose one or the other, right? And as part of, say, a forensic investigator, it prompts additional questions, which is always good, right? Even if you later debunk it, right? And you can explain why, or maybe you can't explain why, those anomalies occurred, right? So what we have done is, if you turn the slider down for less, breakup of all of those squares or, less components, those characteristics go away because we found that they were like very refined, right? So, and the model's still learning, right? So, but excellent comment. Thank you. Okay, so the other area we've been doing analysis around, and this dates back also to our experience in steganography for the last 25 years. I think we've presented on this topic at least 5 or 6 times at DEF CON, maybe more, around all the steganographic stuff that we've done over the years. And as of late, we've started to see people that are embedding malcode in images to then perform a jailbreak or a DAN attack to jump out of an AI LLM and then spawn something that is not desirable. Some of the vulnerabilities that have been identified out there is it jumping out of the LLM and the malware then spawning email and sending sensitive data like out of network and things like that. So we're continuing to do research around that. If you do want to learn more about that, I dropped that link in here around some really good research from the military side of things. And then in addition, just like many of these things, adversarial type techniques with what we talked about with GAN earlier and more, they're just going to get better over time, right? So this will continue to be a cat and mouse game. But hopefully you'll feel a little bit better armed with a free tool you can use. And we're going to continue to mature that over time. And you guys can use that through ChatGPT. So lastly, if you didn't get the QR code earlier, you can click it here. I also have little cards up front where you can take one as well. If you want information, you can always reach out to us at that email address too. If you want to participate in the Python toolkit or do testing, with us and things like that too. We always encourage that. So I know we have a few minutes left. And open it up for questions. This usually piques a lot of people's interest. You have a lot of questions, so go ahead.
So you run an image or videos through AI to ask it to correct them?
Yes, and I've done that. Yep, I've done that with Copilot and OpenAI and DALL-E and ChatGPT, and then also with Midjourney. And it'll work in all cases, so it'll try to enhance it. What is the result? And then, so the following question is so after you did that, did you find anything else? I find more times than not, it breaks the image worse than makes it better. It'll visually look better. So the smoothing we pointed out with the horse and the non-horse characteristics seems to kind of fix that. Because especially if you put the prompt in there and said make this look more like a real horse, right? It can fix those things. But by introducing that seems to kind of break other things. One of the key things being the compression. Because once you compress it again, the quality of the image typically starts to deteriorate, and because of that, it brings out more of these remnants. Is it always the case? No, sometimes it can circumvent it too, but I find, if you're to kind of put a line in the sand, I find more times than not, it uncovers more of itself rather than hiding it. But excellent question. So, yeah, go ahead.
Black Hat was there were a number of vendors who were selling some software which we can detect deepfakes with X% accuracy. What's your assessment of that? Is technology there or something that's not there?
Yeah, I know I saw a couple of them there too because I was at Black Hat. Personally, I personally wouldn't comment on them until I had a chance to actually test them. But from what I saw and some of the demos that were going on, they looked very interesting. And if you go into ChatGPT and you look for other, fake image analysis tools beyond the one, we've highlighted here, there are other ones out there. I found them to be, honestly, not very good. And we use that to kind of distinguish ourselves in terms of we know the characteristics we're looking for here. Let's refine our own GPT to improve that level of accuracy and especially the depth. A lot of them just do a quick analysis and say, fake or not. Doesn't give you any detail. Doesn't allow you additional prompting or things like that. So, go ahead.
Yeah, and false negatives, and so how to
I've only found one false negative, and it was related to the astronomer guy. So, there's a million images out there, right? And I found one with Ben Stiller and somebody else. All of them were testing positive, we're finding it. That one was not, and I don't know why, so I'm still working on that. So in full disclosure, occasionally, it just means we have more tuning to do with this, but yes, that was one example that I found. And sorry to mention the astronomer. You had a question in the back, right in the middle? Oh, that was the question? Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just gonna ask on moving some images to video. I know that there are certain architectures that are better for having videos, like moving from a con 2D to a con 3D. Is that something that you're thinking bigger tools like this?
Yeah, my friend Chet, who we collaborate on all of this research, he is looking at that. So we're doing a ton of video analysis. We have been for a while, but we're doing a lot of fine tuning. So not there yet, but it's kind of the focus of what we're doing now. So, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's a good question. In all honesty, we haven't had enough data that is like the Putin and Trump photo. No, and knowing in advance that these are not AI or Photoshop characteristics, but a byproduct of the deep analysis we're doing of finding a non-human characteristic, which again was by accident, but those are the best findings, right? To kind of mature the tool. So we're still getting there. So honestly, I don't have an answer for you. Have we had a few ones that we haven't, analyzed properly, yeah. And that's something Chet and I are continuing to work on to refine the Python tool set itself. Yeah, so. Oh, go ahead, sorry, I know I skipped over you a bunch of times.
Have you thought about incorporating this into something like Zoom in real-time analysis?
It's been a frequently asked question for sure. Will there be an API for things like that? I am running it in my own Azure tenant to kind of do that with a callback to ChatGPT. So I'm actively running that. So then, if you wanted to leverage Power Automate or Power App or whatever, right, to then, gather that data. It also allows you to upload a whole bunch of images rather than like one by one, where it was sort of a limitation of GPT. The GPT we have, is a byproduct of ChatGPT. I mean, great analysis there, not knocking it at all, but like the big question was like, hey, could I integrate this with Zoom or email or things like that? And that is something we're working on. And I've gotten as far as where I have it, running within my own Azure tenant, and you can upload a bunch of images. And now I'm starting to work on the back end to kind of do that. There's something else I was going to say related to that, but it'll come back. Good.
So to verify, you use noise, exit data or metadata, and the lines to check if it was there, not really. Was there any other features?
Yeah, there's a bunch of others. So there's the error level analysis. There's actually a GAN analysis and detection tool to see if it was GAN-generated, leveraging an adversarial type of approach. And I think there's one or two others in there too. The tool will tell you all the tests that it's going to run. And if you're, a professor and you're like, hey, it doesn't include this test, and I want to add that in there, I've been doing that with my own prompting too, and say like, hey, because you're having a conversation, right? Rather than doing a one-off test. So I've done other prompts and stuff. That's how I found like the reverse image stuff. That's how I, and OSINT-related data and stuff. But if you had like another model, you could put that prompt in. I don't know if OpenAI would support it or not. It would depend on which ones, they obviously support and understand. But I've had really, really good luck with doing that technique. So I would encourage you to explore, And if you want to let us know, we'll add it to the tool for sure. So.
Python tool set
What we're doing now is on a case-by-case basis. If you reach out via the email address, that we provided, if you wanted to get involved in the research around that, we're kind of doing that. You could also use it for your own testing and stuff too. So that's how we're kind of handling that. The GPT, it's already out there, and it does a lot of what our tool does. Obviously, there's a couple additional things that are not in the GPT because they're very unique. Yeah, but short answer is, yeah, if you wanted to test it, reach out to us, and we can talk more about that for sure. So.
I was wanted to recovery scientists from all students.
Has this ever been used, has this ever been used to determine at scale, like fake news, fake images, kind of trends, or like that kind of large scale for research in other areas?
Use the microphone.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's some of what we want to do next with what we've built out in our own Azure tenant is to kind of like do that. Because we've done, I have some experience in data science from some of my previous jobs and some of what I do today. So just thinking about, how we can leverage that knowledge set and different corpus of data and different methods. So, always happy to chat more about that though. Of course, yeah, absolutely. Yep, we work with two other universities currently. Yeah, so one of them is the University of Arizona, because Chet and I have been or are adjunct professors. I used to be an adjunct professor. Chet continues to be. So yeah. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, absolutely. We work with I don't want to say in the mic.